Good evening, everyone. Welcome. It's a pleasure to have you all here for our virtual event. It's been a little bit of time. We are happy to be closing out the summer with this conversation around greenlighting diaspora narratives, and we are very proud of the panel we've been able to bring together. Before we hand off the evening to them, I'll do a quick introduction of Indiaspora. As many of you already know, Indiaspora is a not-for-profit community of global Indian leaders, which includes artists, change makers, entrepreneurs, executives, and philanthropists who come together to make collective impact. On the one side, we all have the incredible success stories of the Indian diaspora, CEOs running some of the world's largest companies, leaders in culture, arts, and government, innovators in science and technology. And on the other hand, we have pressing global challenges around education, AI, healthcare, climate change, and building stronger ties between nations. Indiaspora's role is to connect these leaders with each other and with opportunities to give back. We host forums and convenings where ideas are shared, collaborations are sparked, and solutions are explored. We spotlight stories of leadership and generosity so that the world can see the positive contributions of the Indian diaspora. At the heart of it, Indiaspora is about community. It's about saying that no matter what we achieve individually, it's what we can do together that matters more. Whether it's mobilizing resources for disaster recovery, or strengthening ties between nations, or creating a platform that inspires the next generation, Indiaspora provides a home for leaders who care about purpose as much as success. There is no better way to segue to the people whom I'm introducing you today than to talk about leaders who care about purpose and success. I'm going to introduce Anurima, who will be leading the conversation and facilitating it. And it's such a pleasure to talk about somebody who's spanned two careers, so to speak. She is not only a successful civil rights attorney and advocate, but also a creative force in the world of film. Anurima has produced some incredible documentaries, including the Oscar-nominated Writing with Fire, the Peabody and Henry Award-winning While We Watched, and the Emmy-nominated Our Body Politic, and the docu-series The Vow. She's passionate about telling real, powerful stories that matter, and through her work, she's making a difference by combining justice with storytelling in truly inspiring ways. Anurima, welcome. Happy to hand off to you and look forward to the conversation this evening.
Thank you so much. And I can't tell you what a pleasure it is to be here. I, many years ago, was part of the initial crew of Indiaspora. So I feel like it's been part of a journey of really being able to tell our stories for so long. And so part of being not only being a lawyer, but mainly being a storyteller, it's pretty inspiring to be part of this group. And so there's many people here who have been such an instrumental part of my journey. I'm gonna not waste any time here, which is that I want to have each one of the panelists have a chance to introduce themselves in a minute each, and then we're gonna jump right in. So Mukul, why don't I start with you, and then we can move to our other two.
Sure. Thanks, Arunima. Hi, everyone. Good evening and good morning. My name is Mukul Deora. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Lava Media. Our most recent project was The White Tiger, which was an Oscar and BAFTA nominated film that was #1 in 70 countries on Netflix. Some of our current projects include a retelling of the Jallianwala Bagh massacre, an anime version of the Mahabharata, and a children's animation on India's best-selling children's picture book series called Gajapati Kulapati. Thank you.
Thanks, Mukul. So let me now turn to Megha, and then we can go from there.
Thank you, Anurima. Hello, hi everyone. Thank you so much for having me on this panel. I'm Megha Kadakia, and I had a very interesting way to get into the career of filmmaking. I initially started my career in the corporate world at Disney and Deloitte, but I was always drawn to storytelling. And as a way to create impact, that led me to being head of media at Creative Visions, where I worked with filmmakers and change makers, and ultimately have been producing my own films. One of the things that I really strived for, especially here in the United States, is figuring distinct and interesting ways to tell our stories in compelling and entertaining ways, and really bringing the diaspora together. So over the last couple of decades, I've produced comedies like Miss India America and The Tiger Hunter. I've been so lucky to work on documentaries such as the Oscar-nominated film To Kill a Tiger. And most recently, I produced a film, Patel, which is a gangster dramedy with a South Asian ensemble, directed, written by Ravi Kapoor, that just wrapped production. So I mean, it is an incredible cast. It is a who's who of the South Asian talent that's here in the diaspora, but it's around such an innovative concept. And so really excited there. And over the last few years, I've developed a company called PRISM Entertainment with my co-founders, Priya Giri Desai and Shruti Ganguly. And we champion fresh and disruptive narratives in film and television. We currently have a deal at Macro for a series with the Bangalore Detectives Club, and multiple other series in development across companies. So thank you again to Indiaspora, and I look forward to this conversation.
You're already getting a sense of all of what's being contributed in so many different ways. And last but not least, Chaitra, please join in our crew here, and excited to have your voice and the ways in which you've come in, be part of this diasporic moment that we're having even on the screen.
First is thank you for having me to the Indiaspora team, and Anurima, you're doing a fabulous job moderating, love it. So I'm Chaitra Vedullapalli. I'm the president and co-founder of Women in Cloud, with the mission to democratize $1 billion in economic access through workforce development and economic development and advocacy work in the tech industry. So Film Platform became a very critical platform from advocacy through a storytelling and creating sustainable IP from a tech perspective. And when we looked at all the investment platforms, most of the investments was going through a SaaS infrastructure. So we were like, what are other infrastructure that is available? So during one of the Indiaspora event, I met another member, Rashana Shah, and she kind of opened up the eyes around how Hollywood investing can be a phenomenal investing, along with all the tax benefits that comes with it as a business owner. And how can we really mobilize an advocacy work? So that allowed us to establish the Film Fund, starting like, I think 2 years ago. And within 9 months, we were able to really produce 3 movies, and one became Oscar qualified. It was Icons, and 2 movies are getting into the world. So when I look at like a film, because I am like an avid film watcher, so I watch 3 movies a week probably, because it gives me a lot of inspiration to really think about new ideas and innovation, followed by the TED Talks. So when you think about kind of today, as you're watching and listening to us, take something away that you can really look at your investment dollars that can be used for mobilizing storytelling in a very unique way. Because each one of us who are in the tech industry, they don't understand the money part of the filmmaking. They don't understand the culture, how you can mobilize, and whoever understands it can make a huge difference in how we represent our culture and how we represent our community.
Totally agree. And so I hope we're going to have a chance today to talk about different ways in which all of you who are joining us can join the party, because I think it's been such a transformative one for each of us. I actually want to take another minute, and I know that some of this was already touched upon in the journeys that each of us have taken, but I'd like to take a minute to try to talk about the ways in which I think all of us are centering in some ways different sets of voices. And so I'm going to start with Megha actually, and then I'll move my way around, which is, I think Megha, in so many ways, how you've been able to platform South Asian narratives that are in the diaspora, including in the United States, because I think it's each of us have sort of had a different lens on this, and we'll get to it, right? But to talk about sort of your journey doing that and where you think we are in this moment, right? Which is one where I think both of us agree the word explosion is one that we can use and to describe it. And so I just want to give everyone a sense of some of the roots of this, and then where we are in this moment.
Thank you, Anurima. I really appreciate that question. When I started 2 decades ago, it was very difficult to get a South Asian story to screen, especially here in the United States, because there just wasn't a market, right? Or there wasn't a defined market that we could point to that had worked for studios. And in fact, most of the films were not getting greenlit by studios at all. I remember when we made Miss India America, it took place in Orange County. Mira Simhan and Ravi Kapoor co-wrote the film, and Ravi Kapoor directed it. We had gone to an executive, a South Asian executive. The story involved South Asians, and he said, could you make the boyfriend white? Because it will be more appealing. And I think that was very common, to try to insert characters that weren't integral to the storyline, but it would be helpful in selling the film. And that was just 2 decades ago or 15 years ago. That was what we kept hearing. And so many of us had to independently make these projects. But what we did in doing that is we developed this incredible community of filmmakers, of writers, of directors, of producers who rose up together. And there's so many of us who started with a community here in Los Angeles called Artwalla, which was the first community that was brought together to really encourage diaspora content across globally even. And it was that movement that inspired many of us to join. And that was over 2 decades ago. And here we are today. And I can tell you, when I was casting for films in the early mid-2000s, we could barely find 5 people who we would choose between. Today, for Patel, when we were casting, we knew who we wanted, but there were many roles that we were just looking for. Hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds. And when I look at that, I think about how widespread this industry is just here in the United States, and what we could do to really elevate our storytelling, and how many people are affected by South Asian stories. And you can see it on screen, and it makes me even more excited. And that, Chaitra, goes to the work that you do, and the work that so many people do is really coalescing film funds and funding around this, because without funding, these stories just don't get told, right? And there's just no way for these stories to see the light of day. So I think that's where we're at, is we have so much incredible diverse content ready to be seen and heard and told. And we now need to pair that with incredible filmmakers, community that's been around, and financing. So I'm excited by where we're at, and hopeful that we're really bringing the right stories to light.
We will come back to you on that. Chaitra, I want to turn to you. I mean, I think that there's one, I want you to give a sense of your own journey in the film space, and the kinds of ways in which you've, the kind of projects you've executive produced and had a production role in, but also just sort of, again, this sense of how you yourself have evolved in the ways in which you're thinking about the film space, and the way in which what's being seeded in it, and what's blooming out of it right now, and how we should think about that for everybody who's on the call and wants again to join the party.
Sure. I come from a tech world. So think about, I come from a Star Trek world into a Hollywood world, which is very archaic in processes. And everything is on, USB. And I'm like, why are you transferring data in USB when you can put everything in cloud? I got to really see very different worlds that was. And second is, gender inclusion was definitely same as what was happening in tech and what was happening in film. It was identical. And the access to funding was identical. It was less than 2% go to the women-led producers. And it was kind of devastating because no one was providing them the kind of support that one was there. So when we set up, we were like the first South Asian women setting up a film fund in Hollywood. Nobody had heard about it. And we said, wow, that's a gap. In the history of Hollywood, there was no women film fund from South Asian, and it all sparked through Indiaspora conversation. There was one session called as Hollywood, Bollywood, and Jollywood session. It was the most funniest title. I said, it's all about movies. I want to go learn, but it really taught me about how the money is made in the Hollywood industry, right? Now, when you think about how it works is when I look at it personally, when I'm looking at a movie, yes, the story is good, but how does it meet all the audiences? Not just one demographic, but does it tell the culture what is happening right now? And are we driving an assimilation? Because most of our stories are film to, like book to film model. So everything needs to really meet that criteria on how we go about it, because then the development process of the movie is fast, investing is very easy, and you can also realize the ROI very quickly. So we can tell the investors quickly. The other thing we realized, which was not available for the tech community, is the red carpet access. Only the Hollywood had that. We didn't have it. We said we democratize that one. Let's democratize. So in the last, I would say in 11 months, we were able to get over 1,200 people go to South by Southwest, TIFF, San Diego Film Festival, got into all the AI panels, literally democratized that one because that one access was not very created. Because the more they understand, the more the investment comes in. And every person in tech has money to invest, but they just couldn't figure out what that whole engine looks like. So we are educating people to bring in, and then creating is a group of folks with few opportunities saying, yes, you are investing money. Yes, it's an investment model, but you also are making friends, and we are going together to watch movies, which is what we enjoy the most. We get to talk to the film producers and the directors and the talent and see how we can really open up access for them. So through the whole process, I realized a couple of things. Most of the producers really don't know go-to-market because they don't think about movie as a product. They think it is their life work. They don't see as a product. Investors, they only look at this as a product. They're like, okay, I will put in $100. What is my return? Is it 5x, 10x? If it's not, I'm moving forward because the alternatives are available. The second one was the AI. How much AI are you using? Are you using a little or are we using a lot? So that one was something very fascinating. There was a lot of pushback on usage of AI. And we said, no, we need to look at how the whole archaic processes can be operated. So we cut like 30% of the production revenue, cost just using the tech. And the third one was the thinking models that the producers had. We were just misaligned. If I go next time and invest, first is the thinking has to be aligned because they can think globally rather than just at just it's my product, it's my baby, instead of thinking about what can the world really experience watching that, what kind of culture shift we can make. Can we create a new paradigm shift when we watch it? So when we release the American Underdog, Warrior, which is coming out on August 29th, we got the Latino community, we got the African American community, we got the Indian community. Immediately, our ROI for the movie just went good. And we said we'll put some Bollywood masala, which is a romance in it, and make an MMA movie very interesting. And that was what caused more of the excitement. So you could see everywhere on the social. So every movie has been thinking from an angle of the audience and the persona who's going to watch, and can we make it as diverse so it can expand globally, and the go-to-market is very powerful. So those are the kind of things we were able to learn and infuse from a tech industry, and then investing became very easy.
So Mukul, before I turn to you, I'm actually going to jump in, and not as a moderator, as my other role here, which is to be a panelist in some form. And I want to talk a little bit about the documentary industry, which I think is quite different in so many ways. And I think it's been a place where there have been such monumental sort of impacts. I mean, I think it's, Chaitra, when you're talking about red carpets, you've got multiple people on the screen who've walked the Oscar red carpet in the last couple of years. And I think it's partly because when you're talking about the audiences that we're speaking to, and I think Megha spoke about this a little bit, what we're seeing is stories, and I'll talk about the Indian documentary scene for a moment, right? Which is there are so many films that are coming out of India that are resonating so deeply with global audiences, right? And they're and I think it is people have asked us, is this the golden time of Indian documentary? I can tell you that there are Indian documentarians for decades that have told transformative stories. I do think that there's ways in which there's been some openings, and those openings have come in part because of the strength of the documentary community, but also because we've thought very differently about what does it mean to sort of have a global impact. How do we think about these films really getting out to the world? And so we talk about something called impact production, but to me it's like sort of how do we have outreach and distribution that's going to work for getting these stories to have to be grounded in community in a different way. And so outside of what I've really sort of experienced is the kind of foundation and impact we can have in the world with not that much money. So I can be in rooms of 30 content creators who are working in the documentary space, and with $250,000 in a year can seed all of them, right? Which is a very, very different kind of way in which people are thinking about this. And I think for the documentary space, part of the reason it's worked so well is that it has really been a way for all of us to have voice, even if it's not about returns on investment or anything else. It's been being able to see us out there. And so I think it's just I wanted to raise that and also to say the ways in which I think it's we're not even thinking about having these films geared towards audiences that are outside of the South Asian diaspora, but they are, right? Because the stories they're telling, which are about democracy, they're about journalism, they're about climate, they're about labor, they're about women's rights. Those are resonating across the board. And so it's been a really sort of remarkable time for us to realize the ways in which we are all intertwined from the start, and we are interconnected now, and that those stories can be told, really from the lens of the Indian diaspora. And so for that reason, I'm just going to mention, and I'll mention it again, we've been putting together like an Indian documentary fund, and I'll toss a email into the chat if people are interested in being part of that. Because to seed a bunch of these documentaries has been an important role to have, right? And so before I turned it back over to Mukul, which I just what Lava is doing itself is in multiple different realms, and so I'm excited to hear about that. But before I did that, I wanted to sort of speak to the space where you might not be making all that much money, but wow, are we making a global impact? Mukul, turning to you.
Oh,
You probably
okay.
forgot at this point because it's been a minute, but just want to give a sense
No,
of
don't. That's fine. It's amazing to hear, everyone, all the different things that everyone's doing, really. And when Chaitra was talking about, everything that she was talking about, wearing, all the different hats and the mismatch, it's so true. And you really have to think big, I think. So for me, I mean, when I have to greenlight something, it always begins with a story. Yeah, like for the White Tiger, it was relatively easier because it's an incredible book. When I read it, I cried, I laughed, it just blew my brains out. And but what I really thought when I was reading it, I could see, it sounds so cliched, but I could see the whole movie in my head when I was reading the book. I could see the characters, and I was like, I have to make this. I was obsessed with it. Um, but along with that, I did feel when I was reading the book that there was something in it that would resonate with the whole world. So really for me, and for the next project I'm doing on the Jallianwala Bagh massacre, um, I look at on a very basic level two things. One is I have to love the story and be obsessed with it, because it's going to take so long for me to get the team together and make it. And the second thing is that I have to believe that it can be huge. if I don't believe that it can be huge, on a global level, not only for the Indian diaspora um, or for Indians, then I don't do it basically. And those are steps, like Chaitra said, you have to get into a million little things as a producer. I develop projects as well as, I see them end to end basically. So I find a story, I then find a writer and I develop it with the writer, which takes a long time, as everyone knows. Get a director on board, the financing, and then the marketing and distribution. Ava DuVernay, once said to me that a film is complete when the audience sees it, and I think that's a very important thing that sometimes people forget. So you really have to look at the whole thing, and and for the next project that I'm doing, which is on the Jallianwala Bagh massacre. For me, when I think of this senseless tragedy, the first thing that comes into my head is, how did it happen? How does someone wake up and say, I'm going to kill 1,000 people? What kind of systems of oppression, of colonialism exist for something like this to happen? And so that's kind of the hook for me. And then on top of it, this massacre was also a pivotal point in the history of the world, because it was the final nail in the coffin of the empire. And yet, nobody in the world knows about it. Nobody in America knows about it. Nobody in England knows about it, other than Indians. And we all know about it very well. Most of us know about it because we've seen it in the movie Gandhi, made by Richard Attenborough. So again, that's an example of something which I find very compelling, to tell, and I believe that the world will be interested in watching. So that's kind of how we work at Lava Media. The anime version of the Mahabharata is, we can talk about that later. That's something else, but yes.
Yeah, I want to pick up on a thread, and I'm just gonna let me just say a few things to everyone who's here. Please, if you have questions for us, we're gonna get to them. We will have time. Please start to put them in the chat, which it'll be the easiest way to share them. As and feel free to do that as we're going through, and so you don't forget question you might have. And then I'm gonna send some questions to all of us and just pick up whatever thread you want of it, right? But I want to just, Mukul started talking about this a little bit about why you're doing the particular stories that you're doing. How do you sort of choose? What are the kinds of things that you're looking for? And I wanted to ask all of us, and I'll speak to that a little bit too. Just sort of what it is that that has drawn you to some of the particular projects that you've already invested in, and how do you think about that, both from a investment and marketability perspective, but also from a from the perspective of how important it is for us to be telling different narratives in this moment. And Megha,
Oh, to me, sorry. Right. Sorry, I heard my name. Yes, please,
Yes.
someone. I think I already spoke on this, so yes.
I'll jump in. I can tell you, 20 years ago, as much as I wanted an audience and profitability to be the reason I made a film, that was not the reason I could make a film back then. If people didn't even know South Asian stories needed to be told, it almost needed to start so that people could understand that this was an area to begin with. So I actually worked with a lot of first-time directors. And I felt strongly that the impact we needed to have is to have representation both behind the camera and in front of the camera. And the only way to do that was to tell those compelling stories that felt accessible for me. And as Mukul mentioned, any story that you become a part of, you're part of it, not just for a couple of months, you're part of it for 4 to 6 to 8 years. And it's a long journey. It's a very long journey. And so you have to like the people you're working with. You have to really love the story you're telling. And you really have to believe in the mission of what you're trying to achieve. And so in the beginning, it was very much getting these stories greenlit to start that way. And those stories had to speak to me on some level. And they usually were character-driven pieces that, that were symbolic of our experience or my experience or some sort of experience that I had a part of that felt that we could open it up. Since then, I've been looking more at, I've been part of documentaries and I've been part of bigger budget South Asian narratives. And that is because we are, in my opinion, in the 2.0 version of diaspora storytelling, which is to tell very interesting, unique stories and to tell those from not necessarily an identity perspective, but just a storytelling perspective. And that is, I think, where we differ a little bit from India, is that we had to establish identities here, and now we're able to just tell our stories, or tell any story that we feel compelled to tell. And so that is why, and that's how I pick them. I pick interesting ones, nuanced storytelling. They have to be informative. They have to be cutting edge, and something I could sink my teeth into. And I have to be so passionate about it because it is all I can think about for years, and it has to be all I can think about for years.
So from my point of view, I think the question is pretty fascinating. How do you pick a story and why do you pick a story, right? And I came into the world of movie, I would say movie investing and movie making with watching a lot of movies. Like I just dissect every movie to say, did I laugh in the movie? If I didn't laugh in the movie, why did? But the movies that I like is that it can shift a paradigm for you. It helps you see a new world. It helps you see what's possible. So if it cannot do that, then it's just, wasting of money in my mind, right? Like that's how I see it. And is it moving an emotion? Because when you go there for 2.5 hours, did it make you cry? Did it make you happy? Did it bring you joy? Did it take you on a roller coaster experience? Because in life, you never get to experience an emotion of it. So when you're reading a narrative, you're looking at that. And third is right after you come out of the theater, is it driving a conversation? Are you going to pick up the phone and call a friend? Hey, I've watched this movie. It was pretty cool. And they literally did XYZ, and I don't think it made sense. And I can tell you, when I watched Baby Girl, I don't know any one of you, I was like, what did that movie was? It literally shifted one. Toilet was like that, right? It was just literally shifted your thinking on, wow, I didn't realize is that can even be possible. And those were kind of the paradigm shift, right? Now, when we picked our movies, we did 2 feature films and 1 a documentary. The first feature film was American Warrior. It was an underdog story. It was a South Asian man who can become an MMA star, and then he has to rise, going through all his, emotional roller coaster to really win a competition, right? That's the MMA competition. So it was really good. You could see the entire family, the drama and the romance and the MMA fight. And it really created that intensity in the movie when you were watching. Even when the production was happening, we could feel that. The second one was the war drama. It is around like it's the collaborator movie. It's about the people who are living at the places where the wars are happening. How do the family experience the pain, the conundrum, the decision making? How do they escape and how do you find their choices? It was very cool. So we could actually drive peace in a conversation in the climate that we are living. And the Icons was really created as a documentary to show how women and men can come together and galvanize and show up as icons and make a difference in the world rather than just pulling each other down. How do we shift and start to lift each other up? So it was very much a paradigm shift. So anytime when we are looking at it, we are looking at it and saying, can we do it? And most of the time I would ask a producer, can you lift the movie without a $0 investment? And if they usually say no, then you know they are not very creative and resourceful. Very easy. If they say yes, let's go figure out, can we do brand integration? Can we figure out a creative way? As soon as you know that's the one, you know the attitude is resourcefulness And if they come and sit there and say, no, that's not possible, usually we don't even invest in that. I would say like, nope, that's not the way the thinking models are. So it's really the budget. And I look at each line item and say, if they have less than 20% on publicity and marketing, I don't want to even invest in movies, because those producers don't understand what a publicity looks like, because movie requires a very high amount of publicity, and not, especially the new producers who come in, they don't even understand. Usually it's less than 1%. So it's literally looking at the budget, you know how the movie will perform or not perform. So those are kind of the unique ways you can spot it. And then you can usually use the technology to say what they say versus what will happen actually will happen. But the pre-development itself will know whether this movie will take off, but the story has to have a paradigm shift.
Yeah, so I'm going to pick up on that. I think, I joined this field as a civil rights lawyer, who had an older brother who was a phenomenal narrative director, Prashant Bhargav, and he did many films, Patang and Sangam being ones that I know people here are familiar with. And so I was just, little sister tagging along, and then realized that film had a way in which it could, to me, my goal and purpose in life is to promote dignity and justice, and tool is just the film is just a different tool for me to do that at a time where law, isn't able to take account of humanity in the way that we need it to. And so, but so many of the ways in which we think about the law is the way I've thought about film, which is how do we have a retail story, like a story that tells a wholesale narrative? It tells you what's happening in a time. And so when I think about a film like While We Watched, which documents the last 2 years of Ravish Kumar at NDTV, it's a story of independent media and independent journalism in countries around the world, and that's part of the reason why it resonated so deeply. When we tell a story of Writing with Fire, one of the moments I remember having with Writing with Fire, which is a story about Kabul Lahariya and a group of Dalit women who start their own news network. And there was a moment where it won the audience award and the special jury award at a film festival called Black Star in Philadelphia, which is Black and brown stories from around the world. And I realized in that moment the way in which it had resonated for so many around the world as a subtitled Indian documentary. And so I think that's what I mean about the universe. What Megha put in the chat about the real and the close and the intimate becoming universal in a different kind of way, and its authenticity and the reality it's shaping. But in this moment, I think it's so important to do this in a way that's gonna get us out of the silos that we're in, because we're in a silo of thinking that our stories are, that there's a big narrative being told around the world about divide and conquer, and our narratives about, what are the things that good people have in common, right? And some of the fights have in common. And so thinking about the space and the storytelling in that way, which is how do we actually find the ties that bind, and that can resonate, has been such an important, powerful part of the ways in which to think about documentary for us. So, Mukul, I want to go back to you because I don't know if you have anything to add on this part of it, and then want to sort of open it up to both the audience and all of us to talk about ways in which people can get involved in the film space, along with all of us.
Sure. Exactly what you're saying, Arunima. The world is like Rabindranath Tagore's nightmare has come true, Give me a world that hasn't been divided into narrow domestic walls. What country, what land of freedom are we awakening to? But I think that's a very important core part when you're looking at, be it a documentary, be it something that Megha makes or something that Chaitra makes. And I just give an example of The White Tiger, I guess, because many people have seen it, which is that for me, The White Tiger was a story about freedom, and I read the book like 20 times. So when you go deep into the story, you really understand what it's about, and you find this thread, which you hope is something universal. Like for me, I know that everyone in the world, no matter how rich or poor you are, you have to fight to be free for something or the other, from your family, from your job. Everybody has to fight to be free. So it was really like, even though the story is about a driver and, he has to do something, the price of his freedom is very high. He has to kill someone and, sacrifice his family for it. That's his price of freedom. But everybody has a price of freedom. So how did we, but for us, the challenge was, how do we take that very specific story of this man born in an, impoverished situation in a state, ostensibly Bihar, Jharkhand, and going through India, but how to make that relatable to someone in Alabama, someone in Tokyo, and it was freedom that we found as the thread. I like to say that the two biggest things a producer can do is choose a story and choose a director. So I mean, the second thing, which we didn't speak about, is who do we get as a team to come on board as well. And I spent a lot of time researching everything from, who is the director, what is their track record, what have they done before, the writer as well. Like for the Jallianwala Bagh massacre story, Ritesh Batra, the director of Lunchbox, is writing and directing. So we're developing it together now. Fantastic guy. I'm sure you all have seen the Lunchbox. And on top of that, there's a million other things that you really, have to look at. Like for me, I was very clear in all my projects. I'm very clear that I want them to be, massive as much as I can, while staying true to the story. I mean, the story, you can't change the story because that's what it is. But like for the White Tiger, I mean, I really wanted. If you ask my friends, they'll be like, "Yeah, no, Mukul wanted it to go to the Oscars for sure." And you plan it in a way, with your team. I mean, a lot of it is luck as well, but you can try to have. I think it helps to have a vision. If you have a clear vision from the beginning of what you want to do, that helps you to set the pieces, choosing the story, choosing the team, choosing. I think marketing and distribution, like Chaitra said, is such a massive thing. When I was doing the White Tiger, no one in Hollywood wanted to make the movie. I was running around, with the book in my hand around LA, doing my time there. And then I managed to get a little bit of a bidding war between a studio and Netflix, basically, because that's important. Again, you have to understand who you're dealing with. Very often, if you want to make a big picture, I was looking at the independent route as well, which was interesting as well to me. I love cinema. I love seeing things in cinema. I don't like watching movies at home. I always tell Netflix this. I don't like watching movies at home. But at that time, I was, the research I did showed me that they were a good company because they were expanding massively. They had a very good creative team. And the conversation that I had with them led me to believe that they would put what was at that time my little movie. It was just Ramin, the director, and me. They would put this little movie of ours into every home, which I wasn't sure if it would reach that level that cinemas would allow. So I think looking at the distribution landscape today that exists, along with social media as well for marketing, you have to play that game, because movies is such an interesting thing, because a movie in a cinema, again, which I love, is the 100-plus-year-old method of distribution, and that's why it exists, which is fantastic. But we've changed completely since then. It's all you all know, it's all on the phone now, so you can't really escape from that, and you have to play that as a strength rather than a weakness. And I think it's very, very important to think of the whole thing. I've talked a lot about story because that is what triggers me ultimately, but I'm in the industry, so I spend a lot of time understanding distribution networks and what's happening and the shifts that are happening in all these giants that we have to ride on, really, if we want to achieve some kind of scale. You will have to at some point get into bed with a big studio. If I mean, that's your dream in a way. That's what you have to hope for on some level, sadly or not sadly, but that's just a fact. And I think it's very important to understand that from the beginning and see how you can play that. You have to play that game properly. Yeah.
Thank you. I now want to give each of you just a minute or two, and then we're going to open it up for questions, because I'm going to get myself in trouble here if I don't. But please, if people have questions, please put them in the chat. I just answered one of them that I got privately about recommendations for documentaries, and I'll ask all of the panelists to add any films or documentaries, certainly of your own, but otherwise that you'd recommend people have a look at. But I want to ask each of you just to talk a little bit about where do you feel like it would be very important for this community to invest, to support, to spend time, and sort of what are the kind of opportunities to do that? So I'm going to ask you all to keep it to a minute and a half, because I want to get to questions. But please, I can start with any one of you. So we can go back in the reverse order and start with Mukul or whatever you want to do.
Sure. So here are some ideas I can start off. Mukul, why don't you go? I think you want to go? Okay. So a couple of ways, because most of the Indians who are watching, they probably have anywhere from $50,000 to $100,000 you can invest in it openly, easily, very quickly. Anytime it goes to $1 million, then you really want to be deeply engaged in it. First is when a film producer comes to you and pitches you an idea, take time to listen to them. Really make an effort to listen. And when they say, please invest, say yes. That is the first thing to do, because it makes such a big difference for a producer when they get that first yes, because now their idea can really blossom in a community which has a lot of money. So just know that we can make magic happen. Then when you are thinking about how do I get benefit out of it? Well, you will get the ROI, but look for those soft benefits, which is red carpet experience, meeting with the talent, learning from the producer, because they are the CEO of the company. You can learn a lot from them because they are the master at moving multiple things together. And the things that I've learned from the producers is just an awe of how many moving parts they can make things happen. It's a magic that they create. As a business owner, if you're there, think about co-branding opportunities. Look at your logo, look at your merchandise, look at your products and see how it can be integrated in the movie, because it's very powerful. And then look at IP-driven assets. Like for Icons, we created the Iconic Leadership Book. We created an assessment. We created a workshop. We created everything. It was like profitable from the day even we thought about the idea, because now you can think about is not just a product. The product drives other IPs into the market. Think about co-hosting the premieres. Whenever the film producer comes and says, hey, I would love you to do a premiere, just say yes. Give them sponsorship, host the movie, bring your friends together. Just bringing the audience and getting the feedback and collecting that feedback and bringing to the world itself is the most beautiful act of gift you can give to the producer. And if you know the distributors, whether it's Netflix or Prime or anyone, just make sure the producer gets access immediately. And if you really cannot figure out anything, just join a film fund. And there are a bunch of their film funds. Just figure out if you like documentary, join the documentary. If you like, feature, join something, but do something about it. Yes, you can go watch a movie, but use the money in a way so that it can actually bring the story to market. That would be my 2 minutes of insights of how you can get involved.
Thank you. Mukul, turn to you.
I love Chaitra's a passion for it, and it's, I think any producer will be so happy to have someone like her, getting their back with all these lovely suggestions. Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything Chaitra said. My projects unfortunately are very big, so I don't know how it would work with hundreds of thousands, but. Interestingly, I did speak, MR and me spoke 6 months ago about a fund, an India Story Fund is what we called it, because, when I was doing research for the Jallianwala Bagh massacre, I got deep into India's history. And as you all know, we're pretty much the oldest civilization, or one of the oldest civilizations. And it's insane how many stories there are that the world doesn't know about, like the Bengal famine, with 10 million people. There was 2 Bengal famines that happened, like I think it's like 9 million and 3 million people. Nobody in the world, nobody in India knows about the Bengal famine. Forget about the world. Nobody anywhere knows about it, but everyone knows about the Holocaust. And like that, there's 100 stories, on like you have the Queen's Gambit on chess. India invented chess. India invented zero. So there's so many amazing stories on the history of India that can be made for the world. but it isn't happening because, and I went through this with the White Tiger, the powers that be, it's a complicated thing. It's ultimately what I like to call, living in India, the Western media market, which is the US and Europe. That is the truth. That is what it is. It is the biggest market. So you have to deal with that. And there, of course, as you all know, we are a minority, few percentage. So I think if Indians can't come together and because we represent, I read a report which said that Indians in America contribute 5 to 6% of the GDP, but only have 1% representation. And of course, we all know this. It's for a multitude of reasons. It's changing now, but changing very slowly. And I feel, there's been an explosion, but it's still, when you see the amount of things that really, cross over and become part of a larger discussion, it's very, very, for me, it's tiny. It should be 50 times more when you see the people who we know and the people who exist, especially in the tech and business world. We're punching above our weight. There's no question we're punching massively below our weight in the cultural aspect of things. So I was talking to MR about that. I think we'll talk again to Chaitra about it. I think there is a space for Indians all over the world to come and make something where the other problem is that if we don't fund it ourselves, all these amazing stories that we're working on, all the stories that everyone is making, and in my case, the history of India, because I'm going to make a bunch of things on the history of India, they'll all be owned by, an American conglomerate, basically. So we're not going to own anything of ours because the stories, this is the future, basically. How do we tell those stories? Yeah, but that's a very big discussion. So that's my 2 cents.
I'm just putting in a plug, Mukul, when you and MR are talking about Indian story funds, there better be a significant part of that that's going to Indian documentaries.
No, there is. I wanted to say that, but I was worried about the deadline. Documentaries, I want to make there's so many documentaries to be made on all this stuff as well, and it's like you said, it's a good way in. You don't have to have like a $20 million budget. You have your bang for the buck in terms of getting people working on it and getting something out there is 100x. So there's no question about it. And a good documentary is a mind-blowing thing.
And also,
it's amazing.
I'm going to underscore because I put it in the chat, but like, wow, to have nearly every year for the last couple of years an Indian documentary that has been nominated for an Oscar or won, right? It's an extraordinary space right now. And for people who want to really be involved in these stories that are transforming people's lives, I think it's a real place to support. Megha, I'm going to turn to you and then I'll open up for questions.
Yeah, I'll say this for, as a producer myself, I definitely haven't used any archaic technology. I've been mostly at the cutting edge of technology, but most producers are pretty savvy when it comes to what they're looking for and how they're looking to put a project out to market. But I will say where we come across challenges and where I think the community can be super supportive is, yes, in financing. That is 100% true, but it's also in galvanizing community, especially in the diaspora, to watch a film. The box office only moves if our community is engaged in weekend one, opening weekend, and getting these stories out there. The more that we support our own stories, which is a difficult thing to do. It's tough for even South Asian audiences to know that there's a South Asian film that is here in the United States, right? And I think we need to make that 100% our mission, especially when we think about diaspora content and filmmaking. We need to be galvanized to support our community through the entire process. That is what shifts the dynamic. That's what shifts studios and partners like Netflix and Amazon and others to make this a priority for our community, for these stories. The more that we support our community. And I look at in the US, we have Gold House, right? We have these marquee organizations that do Gold House opens, or if you even look at the Jewish community, they get behind their community completely. I think we need something like that in the South Asian community. And I say South Asian because I do think we need to come together as South Asians when we think about our stories. We need to galvanize each other around our stories. And that to me would be an extremely supportive way. And that, to Chaitra's point, is let's do premieres, let's do marketing. The dollars alone, even 20% of a budget will not galvanize an audience. You need multiples of that. So if all these tech investors and technology experts are here, let's figure out ways to use AI smartly to galvanize audiences to watch these films, because that's what shifts funding for the kinds of films we want to make. Because we're not looking just to raise $1 million to make a film. We need tens of millions of dollars, and that only happens if they see those numbers and audiences come out.
Yeah. I'm going to try to take some of the thank you, Meg. I'm trying to take some of the comments in the chat and sort of transform them into, and not into questions. Maybe I'll just sort of address some of them. I do think that so to Mamta's question about whether there's an opportunity for a structured model or fund, I do think there have been, and film funding and investment is a interesting space, but there have been very important ways in which, and I'll just speak to the sort of Indian South Asian documentary space. I think it's so many of the films that we're seeing they're not getting the kind of support they need within within India. And so it is incredibly important to think about in that context how to support some of them. But I also wanted to just note as a last moment, like there are so many South Asian directors who are making films that they may touch on South Asian communities, but they're much broader. I think about, someone who's a good friend of Megha and mine, Geeta Gunbir, who has a film out, A Perfect Neighbor. It's coming out on Netflix on October 17th, and it's about criminal justice. But it's, it was one of the only films picked up out of Sundance this year for millions, right? And so it's just the ways in which we are actually having an impact well beyond, and how do we support the filmmakers, because right now it is extraordinarily hard. I think some of the structured ways are ways for people who might not have into a project or into a director to do that. And then I'll just speak really quickly to we've seen a lot of support, I think, from folks like Malala and some of the names into some of the documentary spaces. I want to see not being, necessarily, I want to see all of your names, right? Like I want you to think about this as a way for you to also share your stories with the world. And the only way that we actually, I think, come together in a time like this one is to tell our stories and to tell them in all of their multiplicity. And so there's going to be a story out here that resonates with you. I mean, just listen to what you heard on this. We have like MMA, detectives, crime, Mahabharat, like journalism. I'm not even getting close, but just on this screen alone, you have so many different kinds of stories that we're all involved in. Climate. I mean, I do think there are spaces for everyone, for all of you here, to try and engage. And I think Megha put some of the folks who are doing different kind of investment models up here. But let me open it up to others about what are the ways in which, I mean, there's some comments which I tried to sort of take as questions in the chat, but any other thoughts on that? Please jump in.
Who's next?
You can be it.
Okay. My name is Tirlok Malik. I'm an Emmy-nominated filmmaker in New York. I was
Lovely.
the first one made films about Indians in America, Lonely in America. Went to 74 countries, HBO. Since then, I have made many films about being immigrant in America. I have given chances to more than 200 Indian American actors. Some of them are quite big today, like Pooja Kumar and many others. What I have learned, I want to share this with you. When we make a film, we must know for whom we are making this film, how the film will get to them, how much money should be spent to make the film and get to them. So move backward. Second, Indian American community, I've been trying so hard for so many years. I know so many filmmakers, what always they do, look at me. They never watch other people's films. They promote, oh, I made this film, take a look at this. So I don't know how to solve that. Second, many times I meet investors, I tell them, we Indians have success in every field except in the art field. How we can make it collectively impact where the talented people gets a chance to make the films. I have even suggested in New York to some people who raise funds. I say, why don't you make a $5 million fund, which can finance 10 movies and take a chance. But I don't know. I'm still hoping for it.
Thank
And
you, Trilok.
by the
Appreciate
way,
you.
I like what you said. I want to get in touch with you, Mukul Deora ji. So how can I do that? Could you put your number or email?
I will. My bosses here are Shobha. I have many bosses here and Amita, so they will get us in touch.
Yeah,
We're
and
happy
Trilok,
to
I
connect
want to
to
thank you.
people.
But anyway,
I just want to thank
that's
you for the time that you look, there's so many who have spent decades really trying to open up spaces. And I think part of the reason we can have this conversation right now and part of the reason why we're here together is because there is this kind of explosion. There's some spaces and exactly what you're saying, which is how do we then really make this a sustained moment and make it one where we're allowing for even more more filmmakers to feel like they get seated and grow and can grow in this atmosphere. But I just want to thank you for the work because it is such an important. There have been so many who have opened up the doors and have been trying to open up even more doors and thank you for that. And I do think we all want to find some ways to again multiply. But I do think again, let's celebrate some of the ways in which the community has come together, and there's and also celebrate some of the stories that have really opened up, and allowed for us to even tell more than we have already. I mean, part of the reason I do think that there's a when you open a door, like we think about, I'll just use Writing with Fire, which I was involved in, which is gets an Oscar nomination, that opened the door for the documentaries, all of the ones to come, to be able to do it because people started to believe you could, right? And so so thank you to the thank you to the Trailblazers and thank you to all those who are coming. I know that we are past time. Anything else to share to my esteemed
Can I
panelists?
take 1 more minute?
Well, let me give it to the panelists because I know we've got to come, but I really grateful for your reflections. Mukul, Chaitra, Megha, tell me if there's anything else you want to add, and then we'll close it out.
No, just thank you for creating an engaging conversation. Thank you, Anurima, for moderating, and to Indiaspora for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone. It was really, really lovely, and thank you for connecting me to Arunima, Megha, and Chaitra. I'm sure we'll have more conversations. So really appreciate this, and honestly, so much to be done. Like it's literally nothing has happened yet compared to what should be happening. We're not even tip of the iceberg.
But so much has been done, and that I do agree. And Anurima, we do have to celebrate the fact that so many incredible things have been done with when we think about the independent film community and the community even across from India here in the US, it's small. The community is so small, and so much story and content has been created. So, it's
And
you have a long
thank
list
you,
of documentaries
Anurima.
to watch. Please go, please.
Yeah, thanks for moderating a fantastic conversation. And I would say is, yes to all the documentary funds and all the film funds that we should be creating. But as an audience, if you're listening, take a moment to reflect is how you show up for the filmmakers as well as for your community. If your story is not represented, preserve that one, because right now those stories are vanishing faster than you can think, and only the filmmakers can make that possible. So give time and energy and your resources to support them. That's all I would say is, and that is what I'm doing from my community to support all the filmmakers so they actually are very successful. Thank you.
Thank you all. It's been such a fantastic conversation. When we brought the panel together, we knew that there were truly multiple perspectives coming together, and we could hear all of that, the challenge between art and pragmatism. What is funded now? What was funded in the past? Are we doing enough? And I think that's the energy we wanted to capture. I think we're all in agreement that stories need to be told, diverse stories need to be told. And that story fund, we are going to try and create platforms where we can continue having those conversations, and we'll come up with creative names for the fund. And we know other communities have done it well. We'd like to treat them as blueprints and templates and see what our diaspora community can also create. Also, very special shout out to our audience, which included many of our members, many other filmmakers. It is such a pleasure to have our community come together for this. And we are very appreciative that Zoom allows this to be India, US, New York, Bay Area, all together in the same space. And thank you for taking the time to be here. And Team Indiaspora is very grateful for all the attention that you pay to the topics that we raised. Thank you, guys. Take care.